Pedro, welcome to the Democratizing SEO podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, the honor is mine. Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting to be on. Today we're going to talk about search engines of tomorrow. And you're an ex-Googler who's now an SEO professional. So I'm very keen to hear what you have to say around this topic. Now, what was your role at Google?
So my role at Google kind of evolved since I started Google. I started at Google in 2006 and I left in 2011. So it's been a long time already. But when I went into Google, it was mostly as a I'm from Portugal. I'm native Portuguese speaker. They wanted Portuguese speaking people to fight spam in Portuguese, and they were hiring for other languages as well. But it happened that I was chosen to be the one to go into Portuguese. Um, so my initial task and role at Google was spam fighting. Checking for quality issues in the results, etc., and doing some kind of spam fighting. And then over the years, kind of I evolved into like doing some kind of external communications with webmasters. I started to collaborate with engineers into more sophisticated things like algorithmic improvements on things that couldn't be tackled manually in a spam fighting method, and going more on an investigative kind of side tasks into kind of, make sure that, the results are of good quality. So it was more like a proactive approach rather than a reactive of fighting
Mm,
spam.
mm. So, which teams or departments at Google did you liaise with quite often within your role?
So most teams that I kind of liaise with were search quality engineering, which sits like mostly in Mountain View and Zurich. Search and search front end team. Then there's like Anchor's team that deals with kind of all kinds of link calculations and etc. And synonyms team, so you can have like a lot of there's almost one team for every single thing that you kind of have in the search. So, there's no lack of teams that I kind of liaised with, but all of them fall in the spectrum of like they are all involved either with like the front end of search
Mm,
or how search works and functions.
mm,
So that was my kind of day to day. I was also part of the internal tools development team where I kind of helped the internal team develop tools to fight spam. And being someone that was my alma mater, my degree, I have degree in graphic design and web design. So that's why I started in university back then. And I was mostly tasked with kind of, building the front end of our spam fighting tools.
mhm.
So that's what one of the things that I kind of did there that I kind of also enjoyed. Like it was my, you know, full engineering kind of part that I was, embedded into code with all the engineers and doing stuff that was not like spam fighting or watching the web.
When I think of search engines of in current times and also search engines of the past, right? I think of the way they change quickly. They're constantly changing for the benefit of users. What are some of the changes you saw ahead of time? By ahead of time, as in ahead of it being published to the general user. What are some of those changes that you saw?
Well, that was, I mean, from, I think one of the things that I saw kind of was Google's, Google's dive into more try to assess what's quality. So that's one of the steps that the initial Panda algorithm gave. And I was there before. So one of the problems that we had to tackle was like, how can we deal with spam that it's not actually spam? It's not something that it's like throwaway spam or gibberish or anything that you kind of, can remove from search results, but it's not nice to have, and you cannot actually like intervene manually because it's at scale in a way that it's unfeasible for to tackle at the human level. So it would have to be dealt at like algorithmic. So this was one of the things that we started to see that kind of, triggered Google's kind of move to a more what we have today, like EAT and EEAT and all of the things like that surround those areas. So that's one thing. Another thing that I always like thought that Google would become is like Google will want to become your personal assistant. Google is like Google's motto or Google's mission statement. If you read it, it says, organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And they say the world's information. They don't say the web information. They don't specify that it's the web. They say that it's the world's information. So that goes beyond the web. If you read it correctly, right? So, and that means that Google will want to tap into anything that it's, when it's rich within the web or on the internet or into some other interwebs, that it can kind of tap in and kind of make it, so it benefits you in any way. And for that, it has to know you. It has to know what you like, what you dislike, so in that way, and that's what Google wants to become, someone that knows you and can advise you in the best way. And that's, I think, what a search engine wants to be. But now we have like all of this, ChatGPTs and AIs and anything that even Google is building their own. But I think they always had this goal in mind. Just they were a bit like, I think they were being too careful. They had more to lose than other companies that were bolder and could risk more in putting out stuff quicker. So they dropped the ball, if you can say that, when it comes to kind of timing and releasing of their own AIs. But I think going forward, we will only see kind of this getting stronger. And this is actually what Google always wanted to be. So I kind of was surprised that they kind of, were not the first in doing this move, before all the other players came into the market.
When I think of the way social media impacts Google and search overall, I see huge influence with the way they serve users. So from my point of view, social media and search engines, they have the same users, the same user base. They're all going after the same users, right? People, humans, right? And when I think of the SERPs, I remember when I started to see information on the SERPs itself, right? And I thought, that's interesting. Why that and why now? And I always relate it to social media and the way social media is influencing users, as in it's influencing users to have a certain expectation from the platforms that they're using. You mentioned just a moment ago that Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information. When you think of the way they are influenced and driven by their mission statement, do you think they're more influenced by online activities or offline, or is it a balance of both?
Well, I think they can only grasp what's online, right? I think they want, but I'm sure they want to get a sense of, is there anything offline that could hint what users are interested in, and kind of how can we show this? I think Google is trying to kind of do this with kind of, I don't know, Google Discover. Google Discover is something that no one has kind of figured out how it works, because how it works is usually like it taps into user behavior. So what has this user read before? What are the publications that this user follows? What are the types of content that this user consumes? And what are their interests? And tries to surface that in a more proactive way rather than being a reactive way as search is. So I was having a conversation the other day with someone else because we were having the conversation on the lines like, oh, TikTok or Instagram or all this social media is stealing away users from Google. And I don't think it's like, I don't think like stealing is the correct term here. I think like Google was always something that filled the need for something that we didn't have. For example, before we didn't have Instagram or TikTok, which is a more visual way to consume content than Google is. So, for example, if you wanted a restaurant or if you wanted like a review of some bar or something, or look at some food, you'd have necessarily to use Google, despite not knowing what your friends like around you or what your community prefers. So you would go into Google because that's what you had. So, and as soon as we started to have other ways of consuming content and segmenting and getting a sense of what our community around us does, like TikTok provides, like Instagram provides, then we put our actions into the right box, which is the social media box, that's to do exactly that. So we just shifted what we only had one way to do into a more diverse way of doing the same things. So, because we were limited before by one tool that was Google, and now we are not anymore. So we can start shopping on Amazon. We can start consuming reviews on Instagram and go to a restaurant, to the profile on Instagram and see how do their dishes look like. And then we kind of, but as soon as you start to have a more substantial need for like doing some research, then you default into Google again. Mm-hmm. Like I want to do some kind of, research on, I don't know, how to grow some kind of tomatoes in my garden or something like that. Then I will not rely on such a visual, support like TikTok or albeit I can get some tips from there once in a while, something more sporadic. As soon as I want to get more in depth, then I will go into Google because that's where all the information is. The same goes for kids. Like kids nowadays, they consume a lot of content of TikTok because that's where all their friends are. But as soon as they get an assignment from school that they have to do some work on some research, they will default into Google. But they say that they don't search in Google, they search on TikTok. Yeah, but on your day-to-day, with your friends, you do that. But as soon as you have to do something serious, you will go into Google because that's where the information is. That's where the bulk of the information is. And another disruption on our segmentation is about to happen with AI, because now we have AI that gives us like information at another level. So AI gives you information which is more customized to you, to a specific thing, to a very granular scenario where you couldn't get in Google. But still, Google is going to be there for you to get the big picture of what's happening. So, for example, if you want to travel to the Caribbean, where are you going to research about travels to the Caribbean? Is it on AI, or is it like, do you want to see the full scenario first? You want to see what's there, how does it look like, and everything, and then as soon as you start to refine, probably you'll default into going to AI to give you something more like, oh, build me like a set of activities so I can do on this island there. That's more likely that you'll use an AI because it's something that needs to be customized to you, to your likes, to your needs, that the search engine can't do. So it's just a matter of like, I think a few more boxes are appearing where we can accomplish our tasks. Whereas before we only had one box. We only had Google. So as more boxes appear, we will obviously divide our tasks into the box that is more appropriate to do that task.
So let's considering search engines of the future. At what point, right now, users, we are we think of AI chatbots and use AI chatbots these days. And I think we can all we can all say as a consensus that it's very much at its infancy, right? Compared to where we can imagine it being in 5 or so years' time. At what point did you, as someone who's an ex-Googler, at what point at Google, or perhaps when you moved on from Google, did you realize that AI is going to be such a big deal as it is right now, even though it's in its infancy?
Well, I don't think when I was at Google, Google already used machine learning and some kind of not a sophisticated AI like we have nowadays, but they used machine learning to fight spam. For example, we had a lot of automation in the ways that we could kind of fight spam. So that was already like a glimpse into what what this technology can become. One thing that Google always wanted to do is like take humans from the equation of interfering with search. Like Google never wanted to grow indefinitely a team of humans that look after search results, because that's not scalable. Right. So they want to solve it. They always wanted to solve it algorithmically. And being there, I was always like in the path of seeing, more and more the team is being kind of, detached from all the granularities of search. So we would have more higher level tasks that would kind of not interfere so in depth in search. And this kind of hinted me like, okay, more and more Google is going to default to someday having some kind of AI that decides what is spam and what isn't. And lo and behold, in 2016, I think it was that Google said, we have this kind of spam brain that fights spam. And that's where they are today. And I think that's still true. And I think nowadays they are kind of trying to shift and having more like trying to fit AI in search, and that's why we see SGE, like the search generative experience that exists mostly in the US market, hasn't made it yet fully globally, but I think it's just a matter of time. They are kind of trying to find a way kind of how to fine tune it so it becomes like useful and relevant. And that's why that's why we are seeing such a lately so many changes in search. That's my kind of bet that things are happening this way, because we are seeing so many kind of strange behaviors in search. Like suddenly we see kind of things ranking in a really strange way that weren't ranking before, and I think this is Google trying kind of experimenting and fine tuning things, and they are not getting it quite right yet. So they're kind of rolling and testing and to see how they can make this work. So yeah, I think like it's just a matter of time until we see something more substantial. But then again, Google always had like I knew that Google always had this love for being autonomous and being like non-dependent on humans. So that was like already like a given for me. What I only saw coming at a later stage was like actually seeing like a machine that can actually like think. You cannot say think, because it's like can reason like almost a human, and that's something like that was kind of I saw it on at a later stage only after leaving. But yes, so to say like Google always had this kind of aim in their DNA. I think it's something that you kind of are surprised, no matter how deep in technology you are. I think there were even many people in the AI fields that were surprised with what we have nowadays. And when you read stuff, I don't know if you saw, I think it was end of last year, there was this news that Google put out where they kind of say that with AI they made the discovery of about like 800. I think it was 800. I'm not sure about the precise number, so I don't want to say anything. That's not. But they discovered like hundreds of thousands of combinations of crystals that are or components that are stable and can be utilized in future materials for development of materials for that were at a scale that was never seen before. So I think they said that if we were doing this without the help of AI, it would have taken us like 800 years. So we just had the leap of 800 years in kind of like 1 year, just discovering like hundreds of thousands of combinations of polymers and materials that can be used for discovering new materials for building and for whatever we can use. So that I think not many people were anticipating this or were like thinking like, oh, this is going to be possible. I don't think so.
This is difficult for SEOs to do because we tend to keep our SEO hat on when we use search engines. But as a user of search engines, what do you expect from a search engine as of now, post personalization in search?
Well, I think SEOs. I always had this thought, which is it's a bit controversial in a way that how I see SEO. Because if you think like SEOs, what are SEOs? We are problem solvers. We try to figure out where is the inefficiency between a website and a search engine, right? So a website fails to rank because there is some kind of inefficiency. There is some kind of hurdle. There is some kind of problem that needs to be solved. And this usually comes down to something that is not efficient. Either the content is not efficient, or the loading speed is not efficient, or the internal linking is not efficient, or the website structure is not efficient. So the engine, which has limited capabilities, can't make the most of what is out there. And the role of an SEO is to try to understand the search engine limitations and deficiencies and try to, implement improvements, so to speak, to combat these inefficiencies and make it easier for search engines to retrieve information and kind of rank it and understand it. So, and as we go, the role of search engines want more and more to understand stuff without humans making the effort to be understood. So they are coming one way and we are coming on the other. And at some point we are going to meet in the middle, where a search engine keeps making strides to understand content and rank it in a way that we don't have to do any effort. And I don't want to be the one crying against the demise of SEO. But if you think it this way, I'll leave it up to you to reach your own conclusions. So as an SEO, you want to work on making something easier for a search engine. On the other hand, you have a search engine working to not need you in ways to understand things. So I'll just leave it like that. So that's how I think things are going. It doesn't mean that we cannot adapt and we cannot shift our skills into doing something else. But when I'm referring to traditional SEO, I think at some point, I don't know, it's going to be less and less and less needed. Like you can say the same about programming. Like programmers are, you now have AI that then can do any programming for you, any script for that you want. You don't need a programmer anymore. So the skills of these folks are going to be put to use in something more, in something else, probably more in depth, more specific, more that is more tricky to solve. And that's, I think it's going to happen with every profession that, depends on the web ecosystem to do what we used to do before. We are going to have AIs that are going to be our companions that do the heavy lifting of all, 80% of the work is going to be done by AIs, and 20% that's probably like, going into a Pareto analogy that is always useful. 20% of the work that's going to be more difficult is going to be done then by human brains that are specialized in looking at that and understanding. You can see, like, before we had like to build HTML by hand, and then as soon as WordPress and other CMSs appeared, you have almost out of the box all of the things that need to have a kind of a properly set website just with a mouse click. So if you put this forward, it's just going to happen that, more and more all of the tasks that a classical or a traditional SEO used to do are going to be able to be done by an AI or search engines is going to be able to understand it without the need of anything else. But that doesn't mean that your knowledge is going to be less important. You're just probably going to shift it somewhere else and solve problems that are a bit more complex, that have a lot of it depends around it.
Mm-hmm. When you think of the mission statement, and let's assume or presume search engines pretty much all work the same way, all algorithms all have the same sort of agenda to organize information and serve it to users who are searching for that information, and to do so quickly. So speed is a factor, right? When you think of the way that information is organized, how can we people wrap our heads around the way information is organized? Is there a lead sort of an entity or a brand, or is it any and all information that's organized? I ask this because I'm thinking, okay, for AI, if someone's using an AI bot, even if it's one by Google or another search engine, they at some point have to organize information in a particular way, right? For them to retrieve it as quickly as possible. And I relate this question to what I see when I search for something quite generic, where Wikipedia shows up quite often. And I'm wondering, is it a case of, because search engines, algorithms are aware of a brand, they tend to go to that brand almost like a first priority to see if they have that brand has the information in order to present it quickly? Or is it a case of any information that's out there can be retrieved in any particular order? What is the ordering of the way the information is served?
Well, the thing is, like, if you think now we are going to information architecture realms, and information architecture is a very peculiar area, because it exists in anything. It exists, it exists online, it exists offline. How in information architecture sums up as simply how humans organize things, how we organize information, how we organize our life around us. And how we organize things depends on our culture, our knowledge, our traits, and the area that we work in. So, for example, a doctor organizes things in a different way than a mechanic does, because how they work, what they need on a day-to-day. Probably a mechanic needs to have a lot of, car parts in mind, where a doctor needs to have a lot of, diseases and human traits in mind. So they organize things in different ways. And that has, like, human, how the only way humans can understand information is by organizing it so we can make sense of it. Because if you don't organize it in a hierarchical or alphabetical or, by size, we have many ways of organizing information. But if we don't, then we cannot make sense of patterns of things. And the patterns and the things that are important in each area are dictated by the way, or are influenced by the way you organize information in those areas. So, and you can see this as a pyramid where there's probably like, if you are too generic, you have a lot of ways of organizing the same information. Like, and that's what Wikipedia does, for example, because they are the most generic. They're almost like a dictionary of an encyclopedia is like just like where you throw stuff and you organize it at the most basic level that you can have. So, and probably that's what the entity or the resource that Google trusts the most when it doesn't know really what you want. You are being too generic. You are being too vague. So Google says, throws their hands up and just, here, have Wikipedia. Maybe this is good for you. Because in their ways of understanding information or the organization of information, that's the best that they can interpret your intent. But if you are, as soon as you start to be more specific, more granular, more technical with your search terms, then you'll see that Google probably starts to present you with more specialized, more technical, more relevant websites. For example, if you start to search for, as SEOs, when we start to search for, information retrieval and crawl budgets and all of the things that we kind of talk about, it's very unlikely that Google shows us Wikipedia. It's more likely that Google shows us some, documentation of some, information retrieval book or something more that's in their Google's documentation because that they are search engine. And so that's the thing. Like how Google shows you information depends on the way that Google perceives that your perception for organization of that information is, and what's your expertise or your technicality within the same with this information. Like, for example, I can be, if I'm an accountant, I probably search for tax information in a different way than HMRC or IRS kind of accountant searches, because they are more into more tricky stuff, more granular stuff. So probably they see other kind of resources. They use other words to search. They kind of they already kind of know which ways they construct their phrases and their searches kind of to trigger what is relevant to them. So, and this is to say, Google tries to map. There is no correct way to organize information. That is only the way that makes sense to you according to the level that you are at. And that's when you put out content on the web, depending on the level that your knowledge of that content, you are only going to be able to cater to people with the same knowledge or as you are putting out the content for. So if you want to target more advanced people, more people with more complex problems to solve, you'll have to kind of understand the information at a deeper level to kind of, put out content so you target them. So, and that's how it all crumbles down to kind of. So how we organize stuff dictates our level of understanding of things, which dictates, our expectations, the way we construct our world around us and how we search for stuff.
Interesting. So it comes down to how well you know your audience and what your audience wants from you. That's an interesting way of considering it, because it changes, right? And the deeper you can provide, or the more elaborate you can provide information to your audience, the better Google will be able to serve that information to your audience. But it comes down to what audience do you want, which comes down to which audience do you want to service. Food for thought.
Yeah. And it's like, the same goes for quality. Like we often discuss a lot about quality and what is quality in search results. And quality is similarly to how we organize things. Quality depends on what your expectations are. And your expectations depend on your general culture, your habits, who you are, where you live, what you are used to in your day to day. So, for example, if you are very rich, if you always live in big mansions and have, expensive cars, you're less likely to be surprised, or your expectations to be exceeded by this kind of stuff, because it's on your day to day. So if someone shows you a Ferrari or a Porsche, or you stay at a very luxurious place, for you it's the same. Your expectations are not exceeded. But if your expectation can be exceeded by something like this, but if you are someone that doesn't have access to all these things, then you're going to be more likely to be impressed, or your expectations to be exceeded by something that it's marginally improved on and offered to you. So quality is dictated by our background and by what we perceive that quality is, because me and you, we have different lives. We have living different, eaten different food, lived in different homes, have different experiences, and all this comes down to dictate or help you have a sense of what is the less that you can expect, or what can surprise you positively or negatively. And this dictates what makes quality for you. So it's the same, like for in the end, it all comes down to human kind of perception of things. So there is not one kind of measure for quality. That's why I always say it's not Google that dictates quality. Google looks at their users so they can then do quality improvements. And that's why they are always doing quality improvements, because quality is never set, is not static. It degrades with time. So kind of, it all comes down to humans in the end.
If Google has the best quality results, who would you say comes in second place, and how far off are they from Google?
Well, that's a tough one. I don't know. If you are talking about a search engine, I only know Bing. But Bing is strange. I've tried to use Bing. I forced myself to use Bing. I've switched my search engine to Bing for a whole month back in, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And I ended up giving up because, if I only do searches in English, it kind of works. But as soon as you start to mix English with your own language, if you are bilingual or trilingual, if you do like a search like in Portuguese and you use an English word in the middle, when many terms are in English, and sometimes you are searching in your own language and you put an English term in the middle because that's how you are used to deal with it, then it all falls apart. Well, it fell apart back then. I haven't tried since then, but that's why kind of Bing has like 30% of market share in the English language market, but very little in other countries, because I don't know how I don't know if they haven't figured it out yet, how to kind of, cater more languages outside of English. How difficult it is, it must be very difficult. So yeah, that's kind of, what I would say, kind of, if you're if you're looking for a search engine. I'm surprised with how useful ChatGPT is. I've been using ChatGPT on a day to day. I always use it kind of, I don't use it it's not my default go-to. My default go-to is still search in Google. But for example, if I'm working, or if I want something very specific, like, help me correct this Python script that I'm doing to, extract these elements from an HTML document, I might use ChatGPT for that. Give me, I don't know, I think I tried the other day, what are the best saving options beyond the savings account? I was trying to see, like, I have some money I want to invest. If I don't want to put it in a savings account, what are the other options? And I did that on ChatGPT. And it's actually good, the output. Because when you go to Google for this kind of things, you always see a lot of reviews, which are, the problem with Google is that we have a lot of reviews, which are not actually reviews, but like almost like paid placements, where some company paid these news publications to do a review about their product, and now they are there. So in this sense, I went to ChatGPT for this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't kind of look at Google as well, but I've tried this. So this is the kind of stuff that I've been using it for. And I would say, like, if Google is the first, then probably if you are asking for a second option on a search engine, I would say Google. If you are asking for a second option on an alternative way of getting information, I would say it's ChatGPT probably.
Interesting. But, if you were to think of engineers at Google and the way they are making changes to algorithms, or iterating algorithms, or perhaps creating new algorithms to better serve users, right? They, of course, will be looking at competitors, and either direct competitors or other platforms that has a search functionality that serves users. They're the same user base that they themselves, Google, serve. So if you to envision engineers at Google working on this problem to help users even more, which platforms do you envision they're using as influential platforms, or ones to study for their improvements?
That's sort of, I don't think there's much of like an ongoing research of what they can do, of ideas that they can do. I think at Google, the engineers, they work mostly driven by the problem that they need to solve. So if you have search engineers, they have an idea of what search is down the road, and they are focusing on achieving that search ecosystem that they imagined. And it's not that they are always looking around of who's doing what. It's more that they are focused on their ideal of search and what they discussed with their peers, what search should be. And probably they have like an inspiration of something they saw in a movie, or they read about, or they kind of discussed with someone else. But it's not that they are like, in my opinion, it's not that they are like looking at what competitors are doing. They might stumble upon, look at this nice thing that this other player kind of published. But it's not that they're like relentlessly always like searching for something new, that they are out of ideas. I think what they don't like is ideas. I think their problem is more trying to hone down on useful ideas, and avoid being dispersed into ideas that are too elaborate or too that are only useful in their minds, that they're not useful for anyone else. So this is the danger with engineers, that kind of, when you let them loose, it's very easy for them kind of to go into trying to solve something that's not useful for the greater audience. That's why then Google has product managers, because product managers are there to guide engineers in what they should be developing, and so you don't let them lose developing everything that comes into their minds, because they are always like the ones that come up with the inventions and with the ideas. So I don't think they are looking at what other players are publishing for ideas. They are looking probably at ways to refine what they are doing and how to accomplish their idea. So I think in that sense, it's probably like that they kind of are looking at, I don't know, they are reading a lot. They are discussing with each other a lot. They are kind of trying to do research a lot into new areas and see how those areas can benefit search. And then you have other people kind of exploring things that you can add into search. Like that's why we have so many products that come and go at Google, because they do an experiment, Google Plus, anyone, or Google Buzz or whatever. They come with this kind of ideas of, I have this idea of doing this way. And then nobody kind of, picks up on it. So they're kind of, exploring what more they can add, but what's core to their product is search. And that's something that probably they are further ahead than anyone else in the market. And you can see this because we had so many examples of search engineers that worked at Google, that left Google and tried to create a competitor for Google, and all of them failed. All of them, with no exception. And that just illustrates how hard search is, and how a single engineer, or even if you are in a group of engineers, your idea of search is very limited by what you work on. And sometimes you have an idea for how, that you can search it you can solve everything in one way that you thought about, but then suddenly, as soon as you start to put it out to the world, comes this big truck and totally runs you over because you never saw it coming on the other way. So yeah, and then you have the fact that Google is Google and people don't change for the same things. That's another. You see this with any product. People don't change search engines just for the sake of a search engine, as people don't change a messaging platform just for the sake of another messaging platform, unless it's something substantially different that offers you a really more than marginal benefit. Then you won't see a change. And that's also the sad part of it, because that's why we don't have more diversity in what we use.
Pedro, you went from Google to having your own business, Visively, and it's you stay within SEO. Why SEO?
Well, SEO because it's the closest thing to search. I like search. I like search engines. I like web technology. I like the principles that Google operates on. When I left Google in 2011, I went to Brazil. So I lived in Brazil for 9 years after leaving Google. I'm from Portugal originally. I was in Ireland when I worked for Google, and then when I left Google, I left Ireland. Then I went to Brazil. I opened my business in Brazil with other ex-Googlers at the time, and we created this company that I helped run for 9 years in Brazil, and it became a big company. It was like 70 something employees when I left, and I basically left because I didn't really want to be in the digital marketing world. I wanted to be more within the product / engineering world. And, the marketing, the SEO, that part that is influenced by marketing is not as appealing to me as the SEO part that is influenced by engineering and product. And that's what I wanted really to do. So it was like November 2020. I left Brazil. I sold my part of the company to my business partners, and I came to London, where I live now. And I opened my own, after being a head of for many UK companies, I opened my own business again. And I said, okay, I'm going to stick to being technical SEO and being within product teams. I want to act more like a consulting, McKinsey style, where I kind of, work with clients to help them solve their needs, or they want to, clients that they want to, put together an SEO team and they don't know how. I help them do that. Clients that, want to train their teams into things that are specific to their business in terms of SEO. I do that. To get together with the engineering teams from platform to development to UX and, help them solve the problems within SEO that are pertinent to their areas. I do that. I can do product management. I can do product management, so I have experience in that. And so that's what I do nowadays. And I've been consulting with many clients worldwide. Like I consulted eBay. I consulted with Mercado Libre in Latin America. And I help them on a day-to-day to do that kind of work. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that I kind of changed and I kind of opened my business here, because I think it's something that fulfills me more. It's to chat with engineers and chat with designers and focus on a product and make it the best it can be. And, talk with the people that are responsible for the product and guide them on what are their chances in search, because not every business is tailored to be in search sometimes. There are businesses where you can only work search a little bit of it, and then the rest is through other kinds of channels, and people don't really use search to get to it. So you have to kind of, I do a mix of like business consultancy with search consultancy and SEO. Kind of how viable is your business for SEO and for search? Are you trying to solve a problem that is not really there? And that's what I do. That's what I love to do more than the marketing part of things.
And where can people find your site?
So my site is visively.com. And you can find me also on Twitter. I'm usually more, you can probably find me easily on Twitter, like at Pedro Dias, or on LinkedIn at Pedro Dias as well. And my company is Visively. You can just search for Visively SEO, or, hopefully just Visively will do.
I'll have the link in the description so people can get in touch with you.
I know that's like it's a play on words. It's like I mixed the words with Portuguese and English and kind of came up with that kind of, it's kind of
I love the name.
Google would consider it.
It's unique.
Google would consider it like a typo, but now I overcome that. I've overcome that.
Lastly, Pedro, if businesses knew this about search engines, no, let me rephrase that. Every business should know this about search engines. What would this be?
That just doing the same won't grant you, doing the same that your competitors are doing won't make your site just rank higher. You have to kind of, more often than not, I have this, sometimes people come to me and saying, we are doing this. Our competitors are doing just the same, and they are so much better than us. And I was like, why are you doing the same than they are doing? What's the motivation that users have to go to your website instead of your competitors? If you are just doing the same. And it happens to, like, we are in 2023, and sometimes we are 2024 actually, and we act like we are in 2001 or 2002 still, where having a website was a competitive advantage, and it isn't. Having a website is not a competitive advantage. What you need to have is at least the same that your competitors have. But then if you want to actually succeed, you have to show why you are worth it. Doing just the same, having just, your competitor open a clothes store, so you're going to open a clothes store as well, and you hope to get ahead of them on the keywords that you selected, because now you're going to do SEO. Well, guess what? If you don't have a strong competitive advantage that can then be translated into SEO, you're not going to get better than your competitors. Because again, I'm going to say what I said a while ago for search engines. People don't change for the same. People change for something that has to be more than marginally better, that solves their problem, that helps with their needs, that gives them something that it hasn't been given to them before. So this is what I think businesses should know when they go into SEO, that just doing the same that all others are doing, it's just going to set you on the baseline. It's not going to, give you the advantage.
Well said, Pedro. Thank you so much for your time. You shared amazing insights. Have a brilliant day. I'm sure we'll catch up again in the very near future. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you, Austine. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure participating on your podcast. I'm humbled. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.